welcome to this exclusive interview with the Prime Minister of Grenada, Dickon Mitchell. He is here in Venezuela and is with us. Hello and welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being in Caracas.
It is a pleasure for us having you here.
Good.
Well, can you tell us about the relations between Grenada and Venezuela?
Sure. Grenada and Venezuela have long-standing bilateral relations, and I'll give you an opportunity to guess my age, because Grenada and Venezuela established bilateral relations in the year I was born, which is 1977.
Oh my God.
So Grenada became an independent country in 1974. So, a little under 3 years later, we established diplomatic relations with Venezuela. So it's a testimony to how long and deep our relations have been. They have been mutually beneficial to both countries. The relationship has also been mutually beneficial for the region, the OECS and CARICOM. And this is my first official state visit to Venezuela, together with our foreign minister. And so we're quite happy to be here.
Good, amazing. Can you also tell us the contributions of these relationships between Grenada and Venezuela, the benefits for both nations?
No, certainly. It's a cross-cutting, wide-ranging relationship at the political level, at the diplomatic level, at the socio-economic level, and at the people-to-people level. From as early as the 1970s, many Grenadians migrated to Venezuela. In fact, 2 of my uncles migrated to Venezuela in the 1970s and 80s and lived here for quite a bit. I met yesterday afternoon with the Grenadian diaspora who lives here. So that's testimony first to the fact that amongst our people, we've always moved, we've always shared, we've always had cultural exchanges. Our Minister of Foreign Affairs first came to Venezuela in 1981, and he's bilingual largely because of that exchange. Venezuela established the Venezuelan Institute in Grenada, and that institute was largely responsible for educating Grenadians about Venezuela, but it also gave Grenadians the opportunity to learn Spanish. In fact, the minister taught at that institute. So we used to have student exchanges between Grenada and Venezuela. So first and foremost, I think at the people and at the cultural level, the relationship has always been a very close one. We've benefited socio-economically from a number of arrangements spanning decades. From the Petro-Carib arrangement, which allowed OECS and CARICOM member states for the first time ever in their history to benefit from significantly cheaper fuel prices that allowed them to withstand the global crisis that was triggered in the late 90s and early 2000s, from significant assistance when it came to hurricanes that many of our countries suffered from. In Grenada's case, in 2004, we were devastated by Hurricane Ivan, and our brothers and sisters from Venezuela, through the government and people of Venezuela, provided immeasurable assistance in restoring security, in helping us with the cleanup, and in providing housing assistance. In fact, I was remarking to the foreign minister that post-Hurricane Ivan in 2004, the only planned housing settlement we had in Grenada was as a result of the assistance provided to us by Venezuela. We have benefited, for example, in healthcare by a number of exchanges in the past that provided healthcare services to our people. The Venezuelan government contributed recently to the building of a new wing of our hospital. When we mark our independence celebrations, the citizens of Grenada look forward to the Venezuelan paratroopers being in Grenada and taking part in the parade, and to the flyovers that marks the commemoration of our independence. So the relationship has been wide-ranging. We've always stood for what is right. As we know, Venezuela has suffered some challenging times in recent times. We've always stood for non-interference in the domestic affairs of countries. Venezuela is a sovereign country, and we've always supported the rule of law and supported that we should respect the internal processes of countries when it comes to their elections. So you would see that Grenada, the OECS, and indeed CARICOM was some of the countries that stood with Venezuela when many others were not prepared to do so, and we've done so. in the face of sometimes significant pressure.
Yeah.
You know, but it's testimony to the fraternal bonds between not just Grenada and Venezuela, but I think between Venezuela and the rest of the Caribbean. So we envisage that the relationship will go stronger, will become more integral to the collective peace, safety, and security of the region. As you're aware, Grenada is a member of ALBA, and so we also look forward to that framework strengthening and improving for the mutual benefit of the membership of ALBA.
Yeah, because as we know, ALBA and Grenada is part of the ALBA-TCP, and its alternative model of integration, and the impact of it in Grenada in relation with the relations between Grenada and Venezuela. Can you tell us a little bit more of it?
Certainly. Well, I think for us, it's not just Grenada and Venezuela, but it's also the other member states of ALBA. We recognize that there is strength in unity. There's also strength in diversity. And I think ALBA lays down institutional framework from, for example, the ALBA Bank to some extent even the Petro-Carib arrangement that was in place. It gives us the opportunity to continue using those institutions to find solutions to the common challenges that we face. The issue of energy and the cost of energy is still a big challenge for OECS countries and for CARICOM countries that are not oil producing or energy producing. The ability to find cheap capital to help with our development agenda is a major challenge. Many of the countries that are members of ALBA are debt-distressed countries because we've had to borrow significantly to rebuild our countries as a result of many natural disasters. And I can give an example like Dominica, which was devastated by Hurricane Maria. And to rebuild the country almost from the ground up, Dominica had to borrow. Grenada had a similar experience in 2004. We were recently hit by a hurricane again on 1st of July 2024. So, you know, many times the international community will talk climate assistance. They will say that they're committed to those issues, but the money and the funds never show up. And it is extremely difficult to get foreign direct investment into countries. And many of our countries even face the risk of not being able to afford insurance because of the frequency with which the climate change disasters hit us. So having an alternative framework like ALBA and being able to leverage the collective strength of ALBA, I think gives us an opportunity to look far and beyond the immediate region to other international development partners. That gives us the opportunity to leverage this to get financing and to get assistance in continual development. So we see ALBA as a critical tool in that. There are a number of initiatives that I think President Maduro will be announcing and have announced already, such as ALBA Blue, which is meant to address the blue and marine economy. ALBA Agro, which is meant to address food security and increase agricultural production. Those are all critical issues for us, particularly island states. Because if we are small and heavily dependent on external trade, we saw it during COVID-19, what that can do to us. If borders shut down, markets shut down, trade doesn't happen, it's very difficult to feed our people. So ensuring that we have these support systems, that level of fraternity and brotherhood is critical.
Yeah, and as you said, in the climate change topic sphere, you recently had a hurricane on July the 1st. The efforts of your governments that have made to rebuild Carriacou, right?
Yes.
Good. To rebuild Carriacou, and knowing that these climate disasters are more frequent, are stronger, so how is your country doing to manage these things that are happening, knowing that Grenada is a Caribbean island and it's all sea and ocean around of it?
Yes. No, it's a major challenge. I think it's really an existential challenge. You know, when we say that, you know, sometimes that's a phrase that's bandied about with people thinking about the consequences, but it is. Because in the case of our example, for example, Carriacou and Petit Martinique, in the case of Carriacou, almost 90% of the entire housing was wiped out. So it essentially means your entire way of life is at risk. People die during these storms. We've had to, in effect, we've had our first share of what you call climate migrants. We had to relocate entire elderly populations from the island of Petit Martinique and Carriacou to Grenada because the homes that they lived in were destroyed. Even some of the public housing that they stayed at, homes that catered for the elderly, those homes were destroyed as well. So it meant we had to evacuate tens of people who are already vulnerable because of age or challenges with healthcare to Grenada and to care for them for an extended period of time while we seek to rebuild their lives in Carriacou and Petit Martinique. The education system, schools were damaged or destroyed. So it meant in many instances we had to evacuate all of the students and bring them to Grenada, house them, feed them, clothe them, and give them the opportunity to continue their schooling. All of this comes at significant costs. You know, the electricity sector, the entire transmission and distribution lines were destroyed, the telecoms, the water system. So it is Armageddon-like. And therefore, we in the Caribbean have said we're on the front line of the climate experiment. You know,
yeah,
we are essentially in the lab year in, year out, having to cater with this. And it's not just hurricanes, because in Grenada's case, you know, for the first 6 months of the year, we had a severe drought, historic 15-year drought. We were having bush and wildfires. And as soon as the wet or rainy season began, we got hit with a Category 4 hurricane. So it tells you, and by November, we had severe flooding. So it tells you in a space of 8 to 10 months, you could almost experience every kind of bad climatic
disaster.
And we have to rebuild the lives of our people. We have to rebuild better, stronger, more resilient, more sustainable, and that takes enormous resources. We have been able to mitigate some of this by, for example, purchasing catastrophic risk insurance, but that comes at enormous cost as well. As a country, we literally buy insurance to deal with the challenges posed by things like hurricanes or excessive rainfall or flooding or drought. We've done so for fishermen as well as for our farmers, so that at least we can provide some financial relief in the immediate aftermath of this, particularly for farmers, because when your crops are destroyed, it takes quite a while before you can replant and reap again, and in the meantime you have no income. So we have to provide income support. Through collaborations and partnerships with regional institutions and our brothers and sisters throughout the region, including Venezuela, we were the beneficiaries of significant aid. But I want to point out that it's the Caribbean, it's Venezuela, it's our regional brothers and sisters who've come to our assistance and to our rescue. And so it underscores the importance of institutions like the ALBA framework. It underscores the importance of the OECS and CARICOM because we're in the same neighborhood and we have to look out for each other. But we're also educating our population on ensuring that we understand the challenges we face, that our building and environmental practices are more conducive to mitigating the risk that comes with the climate crisis and the challenges, but also advocacy, because this wasn't created by us, and we have to make sure that those who have created this challenge for the world understand that they've gotten wealthy on the backs of this, and so they owe us an obligation to partner with us to find solutions to the challenges. I've always said we are not looking for retribution, we're looking for partnership so that we can fight the climate crisis together, because I think we've seen worldwide that the changing climate is sparing no one, whether you're in Africa, whether in Europe,
it seems to be inevitable.
Inevitable. And if we don't collectively take on this challenge together, then we'll all perish individually.
Well, Dickon Mitchell is with us in this special interview, but we'll take a very, very short break and we'll be right back, right? Welcome back to this special interview with the Prime Minister of Grenada, Dickon Mitchell. Welcome again.
Thank you.
We were on a climate change topic and how your country made it to face it. But now we will move on to another topic. Can you tell us like the relations of Africa and the Caribbean, as Grenada being a member of the CARICOM, a present member of the CARICOM?
Yes. Certainly, we have been very deliberate, I think, in recent years in pursuing closer relations between CARICOM on a multilateral level, but also in Grenada's case at a bilateral level with our brothers and sisters in Africa. Most of the Caribbean is the diaspora of Africa. As you know, our foreparents were forcibly taken from Africa and brought to the Caribbean by European colonizers to support the plantation economy. And most of our foreparents were enslaved in that process. They fought for centuries to free themselves. And so, you know, even post the emancipation of slaves and the abolishing of slavery in the Caribbean and the Americas, legacy patterns of discrimination, colonization continues, and many of the challenges we face today is a direct result of this. Within CARICOM, we've been championing the need and the cause for reparations. We've also joined with the African Union and we've asked them to support us in that cause. We recognize as well that the continent of Africa itself has suffered tremendously from the colonization and the cutting up of Africa, and it's created a lot of challenges for countries within Africa itself, even within the continent. They've got significant logistical challenges in terms of trade amongst themselves, transportation. Many parts of Africa are still significantly underdeveloped. As many as 600 million Africans don't have access to electricity. So we recognize that as Africa's diaspora, it's important for us to also help and support Africa in its development agenda, in the need for advocacy, and in the need for Africans and Africans in the diaspora to be treated and respected fairly, like any other race or ethnicity worldwide. So we've been pursuing a very deliberate and strategic relations with Africa. In the case of Grenada, we have been entering into visa waiver agreements so that Africans don't need visas to come to Grenada, and so that Grenadians don't need visas to visit many of the African countries. We have sought to attend many events in Africa that promotes trade and investment. Grenada and many of the OECS countries and CARICOM countries have signed a partnership agreement with the Afrexim Bank, which is the Africa Export and Import Bank. They've been hosting several regional trade and investment fora within CARICOM. They've hosted in Guyana, in Barbados, in the Bahamas. Grenada will be hosting on the 20th and 29th of July, at which time we expect to have significant business and industry leaders as well as significant political leaders attending the event, all with the view of fostering closer trade and investment ties between Africa and the Caribbean, and ultimately between Africa, the Caribbean, Central and South America, because the markets in South and Central America are much, much larger than even the Caribbean. You know, and it's sad because we have very little trade.
The connection from the north to the south.
Exactly, and you know, we have very little trade or not enough trade between Africa and South America, Central America and the Caribbean. And so reversing that historical trend where we all look north, I think is one of the key things we are championing, the need for greater South-South cooperation. So we see the relationship as deepening, as enhancing. You have social media, you have the internet, we can learn a lot more about each other a lot faster. You have a lot of influencers. We've been encouraging African influencers to visit the Caribbean, Caribbean influencers to visit Africa. You know, the culture of Africa, I think, is more and more being respected, whether it's through music or dance or fashion or food. You know, all of that, I think, is
the culture in general.
Exactly, and culture is a critical way to break down the barriers that we have. So it's an area we've pursued quite deliberately. I probably wear more African fashion now than I wear Western fashion.
But it's
you know,
gorgeous.
Yes, so it's all part of that, so that I think we can level that playing field and remove the discrimination and oftentimes misinformation about Africa, and we believe that will work for the benefit of all of us in the region as well.
Yeah, and now we move from Africa to another topic. We'll go to the mass deportations, the illegal mass deportations that have been happening from migrants from the United States. The illegal deportations that have been happening. What can you tell us? What's the opinion of the Prime Minister of Grenada about it?
I mean, you know, the United States is a country that is built on immigration. But it's not just the United States. I think the world has an issue that we need to confront, which is xenophobia. And we need to ask, why do people migrate? And what have we done to create that challenge? So whether it's in North America and the policies they've pursued against South, Central America and the Caribbean, whether it's Europe and the policies they've pursued against North Africa in particular, these are all some of the issues we need to address. I'll give examples. You have countries like Iraq or Libya, where the Western countries have played, unfortunately, terrible roles in destabilizing the countries. When you destabilize a country and you create chaos and instability and hunger and insecurity, people are going to want to migrate. If we look at South and Central America and the role that, I will use the term our big brother North America has played or not played in encouraging investment in its own neighborhood, in its own backyard, in supporting stable governments, in investing in healthcare and education, and ensuring that we can trade fairly and equally with them. They've, to a large extent, abandoned their neighborhoods. And when that happens, you then have the instability and the challenges, and people want to move and migrate. To be honest, no amount of walls, no amount of deportations is ever going to stop human beings if they feel insecure or they feel threatened from migrating. You know, and that's a reality that we all have to face with. So we're either going to, in a sense, sit down and have sensible conversations about how we improve the lives of people, how we work together to make sure that their home countries are stable, that we respect their sovereignty, that we allow them to develop their own political systems, while at the same time encouraging trade, better and higher qualities of education, healthcare, infrastructure, or we will have the problems that we're having now. So I'm clear in my mind that walls and deportations is never going to stop people from moving. If ever more are going to come. Yeah. That's the reality, and I think history has always shown that. Not only that, I want to make this final point. Most of the Western world, whenever they had challenges and it suits them, they ask for migrants from the developing world to come and help rebuild their countries. Most of Europe, when they were fighting their wars, recruited people from this part of the world to fight on their behalf. And regrettably, 50 and 60 years later, they've sought to deport the descendants of persons who fought to help liberate their countries from Nazi Germany, for example. So we also have to bear in mind that there are oftentimes clear racial and ethnic overtones surrounding these issues of migration and deportations, right? And that's quite clear many times, that the issue of migration and the fear-mongering that comes with it is oftentimes based in racism, and oftentimes it's directly targeted against black or brown people. And that's just the reality, but I think it's for us to continue advocating for our people. But also letting our people know that, you know, we too have to stay and build our countries. You know, you're never going to be treated better in another country.
Their own country,
right. And it's something we also have to, I think, find ways to make sure that we educate our population about the need to despite the challenges we may have, you're never going to become stronger if you don't face those challenges and stay and build your country. I mean, we have a saying in Grenada, no place is sweeter than home. Yeah. And so we also have to encourage our citizens to stay and build their countries, but we also have an obligation to try and give them opportunities for education, you know, for healthcare, for economic development and employment. And we are better able to do so when there's less interference, when there's greater cooperation and support.
Good. And another thing is the United States government outlawed to the Cuban doctors. And we want to know your opinion, how these doctors has been in Grenada.
Well, we responded to the queries from the United States and shared with them openly the program we have with the government and people of Cuba. Grenada, perhaps more than any other English-speaking Caribbean island, has benefited tremendously from a very, very close and fraternal relationship with the government and people of Cuba. Our international airport was largely built by the people of Cuba. The people of Cuba sacrificed and shed blood in 1983 at that site for the people of Grenada. Many of our professionals, engineers, doctors, have been educated through scholarships in Cuba. In fact, in our cabinet in Grenada, both the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Foreign Affairs received their higher education in Cuba. We have a strong Grenada-Cuba friendship, not made up of the government, but made up of individuals who had the opportunity to be educated in Cuba. To a large extent, if we did not have Cuban professionals working in our healthcare system in Grenada, particularly specialist doctors, the system would collapse. That's the reality. Our brothers and sisters who are in Grenada from Cuba live freely, just like any other Grenadian citizen. They are paid, in some instances, better than our Grenadian citizens, because not only do we have to pay them for their services, obviously housing and so on have to be provided. So we had nothing to hide, and we were able to show to our brothers and sisters in the US government that this is a legitimate program that largely benefits the people of Grenada. And we know that there are similar programs throughout the OECS and wider CARICOM. And we have always been in, I think, staunch defense of the government and people of Cuba to be able to chart their own destiny. So, you know, sometimes it may be deliberate, sometimes it may simply be ignorance. But, you know, I think we have no doubt that our brothers and sisters in Cuba have always been there for us from the time we established diplomatic relations with them. They've had a very, very difficult 6-year period with the embargo against them. We've always called for the removal of the embargo. We've always called for Cuba to be removed from the list of countries that the US says is a state sponsor of terrorism. We continue to make that call unhesitatingly because we've been to Cuba. We worked with our brothers and sisters in Cuba. They worked with us. And Cuba has stood up oftentimes for, and I would use that term deliberately, for black people and black countries in Africa when no one else stood up for them. And we cannot forget that fact. So we stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in Cuba, and we continue to advocate for what's right. It's clear the policy is a failed policy, and we always believe in dialogue. We do not believe in isolation. Isolation never works as a policy to engender any type of change. Openness, dialogue, cultural exchange, people-to-people exchange, economic activity is what leads to improvement in human relations. And we think those are universal principles that more than ever the world needs to encourage and support.
Thanks, that's a really educating answer. Well, and what if we talk about tariff? Better said, the imposed tariff from the United States to all countries around the world, but let's talk about the 10% that the US imposed on Grenada.
Well, I mean, you know, we can't tell a country how to conduct its trade or economic policy. I think as a small, open economy, we recognize the importance of trade. We recognize the importance of connectivity. And we believe the more trade you have, the greater the people's standard and quality of living and opportunity for choice will be. And so I think from our perspective, a tariff-based policy we don't think is likely to be successful. It's likely to cause more harm than good, and ultimately impacts the average citizen. If you make goods more expensive for the average citizen, but the government collects more revenue, you will end up in a situation where you have a rich government and poor citizens. We prefer a situation where you have wealthy citizens and a poor government, because ultimately a country is about its people and about its citizens. So, but as I said, we can't tell a country what policy to pursue or not, but I think from a global perspective, given the interconnectivity of trade, the supply chain, and desire for each country to improve the quality and standard of living of its people, we think what we need is actually more trade and less barriers to trade than tariffs and other barriers, which really are relics of the past.
And we are running out of time, but how the people of Grenada receive the Pope Francis, the first Latin American Pope that the Vatican has, how they receive them?
I think first there was a little bit of shock and surprise, although the
The
population was aware that he was ailing. I think having seen him on Easter Sunday conducting Mass, I don't think the population expected that he would have died soon thereafter, but maybe it's in keeping with the Pope's general personality, that in a sense he had one last big hoorah before he departed this life. But I think it was met with general sadness. Grenada is still predominantly a Roman Catholic country by religion and faith. And so you normally would have had on that weekend a number of festive harvests. Quite a number of them were cancelled, I think, by the bishop. But I think he would be missed. And I think the country was quite proud of the fact that he came from this region. And who knows, maybe we can get another pope that comes from
Latin America.
From this region, yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for being with us in this interview. It was really a pleasure having you with us. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, we were with the Prime Minister of Grenada, Dickon Mitchell, in this special interview for teleSUR. Stay tuned and we'll have more materials for you next time.